saying, so we know that Muslims, when they don't know what's going to happen, what will they say? If they want to say that tomorrow we're going to go here and do this, what will they say?
Inshallah.
Inshallah, if Allah wills. And so
Yeah.
what they're saying is, we don't know, it's uncertain.
Yeah.
Okay? That's how they say, we're not sure about this. Maybe this is going to happen. Well, remember, Allah's the one speaking in the Quran. So why in the world does Allah in the Quran say inshallah? Okay. Now, let me first give you an example of a human being using this expression in the Quran. This is from Surah 1132 through 33, and it's talking about Noah. Okay. They said, "O Noah," that is the people at Noah's time, "you have disputed with us, and much have you prolonged the dispute with us. Now bring upon us what you threaten us with, if you are of the truthful." Okay, so they say, bring it on, Noah, if you're truthful. Then Noah says, only Allah will bring it, the punishment, on you, if he will. Insha, right? If he will. And then you will escape not. Okay, so that's a human being expressing uncertainty. Surah 1132 through 33. The same thing is found on the lips of Joseph in Surah 1299. It's found on the lips of Moses in Surah 1869. So it's found all over the place in the Quran, and it's human beings who are being quoted. Okay, well, why then does Allah speak this way in the Quran? Now, let me give you a couple of examples of Allah doing this. One second. This is Surah 48, 27. And remember that Allah's the speaker, and Allah has this weird habit. This is what throws people off. Allah has this weird habit of getting his pronouns confused. At one point, Allah will be speaking in the first person. Then he'll speak in the third person. He'll shift from saying I to saying he. He'll also switch from the singular to the plural, I to saying us or we or our, right? And so people get very confused as they're reading the Quran because Allah's confused, right? He doesn't know whether, he wants to talk about himself this way or that way. So just keep that in mind as I'm reading this verse, because the mistake is to read it like a non-Muslim and think that the Quran is intelligible like other books. It's not. You've got to apply special Islamic principles to it, right? Remember, they say this is Allah talking, and he's talking from his own lips about himself. Allah, this is Surah 48, 27. Allah hath fulfilled the vision for his messenger in very truth. You shall indeed, this is Allah speaking, you shall indeed, notice the word indeed, he sounds very confident here. You shall indeed enter the inviolable place of worship, if Allah will secure having your hair shaven and cut, not fearing, and so on and so forth. Now, why in the world is Allah saying inshallah? Inshallah, Allah is speaking just like the ignorant speak, to use a Muslim expression. He's speaking just like Noah, just like Moses, just like Joseph did in the Quran. Allah is no better than a fallible human being. He doesn't know what's going to happen. Now, what's interesting here is you could actually play a game with Muslims. Since Allah often speaks of himself in the third person, maybe what we've got going on here is Allah actually talking about another person who's called Allah, right? Because he often speaks of Allah in the third person. So maybe he's saying that he doesn't know, but this other Allah that he's talking about does know. Inshallah, right? If Allah wills. So one Allah is talking to another Allah. Now, I'm not saying that's the right interpretation. I'm just saying, hey, Muslims play games all the time. Here's a game now they should be forced to play because their own Quran is such a garbled mess. Since Allah doesn't know how to keep his pronouns straight, now they should swallow, their own medicine, right? But just to say now, real quickly, there are other cases when Allah does this. So Surah 48, 27, yeah. Surah 9, 28, Surah 25:10, and Surah 33:23 through 24. Okay, so 48:27, 9:28, 25:10, and 33:23 through 24. Okay. Now, here are actually some of my favorite. Well, I don't know if you want to chime in at this point, but the next observations are some of my favorites.
Okay. I'll just make a quick comment on inshallah. For me, it makes sense why Allah is saying inshallah, because Allah's mood changes very quickly, and then he does change his decisions as Muhammad acts. And then he says, yeah, when the time comes, I'll see how I'm gonna feel. I usually try to compare Allah as a pregnant woman who is in early stage of pregnancy, just like very emotional, and then changes her feelings like quite often. It's like very
So,
similar to that's very similar to Allah.
well, you know, you're making me chuckle for a number of reasons. Number one, it is funny how you put it, but then number two, it reminds me, and I don't have the hadith handy, but I know people are going to want to know where I got this from. There are hadith narrations in Bukhari and other places where it talks about Allah, and most people don't realize how Muhammad in the Hadith seems to think that all sorts of things are alive, living entities that we wouldn't normally think are living entities, right? Things speak that you would normally think of as inanimate objects. Well, one of those things that Muhammad thought of as an entity that exists as an actual entity that can speak and so forth is called the Rahim, right? Allah is called Rahim,
Yeah.
and this is called Rahim, which means the womb, okay? And the womb is apparently with Allah in eternity or whatever, and it says that the womb wanted to make sure that Allah was merciful to people who kept the ties of kinship. That is, those who are good to their kins, their relationships,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, the womb would be concerned about that, right? Someone who comes from the womb uh, is they're related. So the heavenly womb is very concerned about this, and it says that the womb reached up and grabbed Allah's loins, and then Allah shrieked out, saying, "Wait, what are you doing?" And then the Rahim, the womb, says, you know, basically, promise me that you'll be merciful to those who keep the ties of kinship. This is in the Hadith. This is Islamic anthropomorphism with a vengeance. The idea that Allah has anatomical features, not just eyes and ears, but even gonads. No wonder Allah shrieked. Now, if you look at this is another example of Muslim sources lying. If you look at the English translation of Sahih Bukhari leaves out that part. It's right there if you look at it in the Arabic text, even though it's not there in the English translation. And so, uh, anyways, I didn't mean to go off on too much of that, but uh, the Islamic sources are a mess. Uh, so yeah, Allah has. Oh, I brought that up to reinforce your point that Allah may not always be in the same mood. If the womb has got hold of Allah by the gonads, he might be more inclined to do something at one point than at another, right?
Yeah.
When the womb lets go, right? Just saying that you know the sometimes that can be persuasive to a guy if somebody's got him, as the old saying goes, by the gonads. Okay. Uh,
Um.
so